Welcome to another Mr. Paul video. In this video, we'll be talking about rate of change and slope. This is lesson 3.2. We'll be finding a rate. What does it mean to be a slope? Okay, so let's start with 3.2, rate of change and slope. And I want you to take a moment to complete this table. Go ahead and pause your video now. You probably didn't even pause it. I'm not gonna lie. Okay, so just like we learned before, when we're studying rates of change with slopes, right, we're looking for some sort of relationship between the 1 and the 4, the 2 and the 8, okay? And yesterday we learned, well, maybe 1 times 4 is 4, and 2 times 4 is 8. This is the relationship that relates kids to rides. And I'm telling you, if this rate stays the same, that means this is a times 4, this is a times 4, this is a times 4, and this is a times 4. Well, if we know that the top numbers are being multiplied by 4 to get to the bottom numbers, 3 times 4 is 12. Some number times 4 is 20, or remember, the opposite, like we talked in class, the opposite of multiply is to divide. So 20 divided by 4 is 5. So for those of you who are like, 1, 2, 3, this must be a 4. Kids are not related, okay? Don't get fooled. We're relating two separate things together. So some number times 4 is 32, or 32 divided by 4 is 8. And 10 times 4 is 40. We've gotten used to being able to multiply by this number, right? This times 4. And like I told you in class, 4 is the rate. 4 is the rate. I kept using the word rate. And there's a reason for that. So yes, it's a proportionality constant, but more importantly, it's the rate to which a kid can ride as many rides. And today we're going to learn why we call this a rate. So let's remember what we did yesterday. We talked about using the words per. We have a something per something. In this case, we have 4 rides per kid. We also learned, per one kid, we also learned that rides goes on, it comes before the per, so this goes on top. And we also learned that kid goes on bottom of our fraction because the word per. In math, remember, if it comes before the per, it goes on top of our fraction. If it's behind the per, it goes on bottom. So 4 is the rate. Also, 4 over 1 is the fraction. 8 over 2, 12 over 3, 20 over 5, because it's ride over kids. Okay. So let's just think about this for a second. We learned the word slope. We learned the word slope. And now we're going to give it some sort of definition, okay? And I'm going to call this the change in y over the change in x. The change in y over the change in x. I don't see any x's here. I don't see any y's here. But what I want to point out is that, remember, x's are just numbers, and y's are just numbers, okay? So all I have to do is figure out which of these numbers are my x's and which of these numbers are my y's. Well, if I'm looking at the rates, it's kind of already spelled out for me. The thing on top, remember these 4s, these things on top, These things on top are the rides. So the rides are my y's. The thing on bottom, which are the kids, are my x's. So when I'm thinking about slope, meaning how much it's changing positively or negatively or not changing at all, I want to look at the change in the y over the change in the x. So what I mean by change is this. How much has to change to get from 1 to 2? Let's just say I wanted to go from 1 to 2. That's plus 1. If I wanted to go from 2 to 3, that's plus 1. If I wanted to go from 3 to 5, that's plus 2. If I wanted to go from 5 to 8, that's plus 3. And if I wanted to go from 8 to 10, that is plus 2. Well, if I wanted to see what the change in y's are, from 4 to 8 is plus 4. From 8 to 12 is plus 4. From 12 to 20 is plus 8. From 20 to 32 is plus 12. And from 32 to 40 is plus 8. So if slope is change in y over change in x, this y changed by 4. This changed by 1. So in this problem, the change in y was 4, and the change in x was 1. In the next instance, it's still 4 over 1. Then we have a change in 8 over 2. 8 over 2. We have 12 over 3. 12 over 3. And we have another 8 over 2. Just like what we had before when studying the proportionality, when we were studying the constant that relates these two things together, this little 4, what we were actually finding was a slope. Now, slopes are referring to graphs in a way that rates are referring to tables. You can think of a rate is to a table as a slope is to a graph. Okay? A rate is to a table as a slope is to a graph. We're talking about the same stuff. If I'm asking you, what is the rate of change in a table? I'm talking about a proportionality constant. If I'm studying the rate of change in a graph, it's called slope. Okay? Remember, a table is nothing more than a way of organizing data. And so is a graph. And we'll be discussing more on these graphs on Friday. That's all for today's video. Peace.